You acquire a business and the product is solid. Customers are paying. But there is no marketing engine, no structured sales process, no outbound, no content. So how do you build a go-to-market from scratch inside a business that has never had one? Benny Hahn is co-CEO of Zep, a cloud-based time tracking and project management software based in Ditzingen, Germany. Together with his co-founder Christian Bob, he acquired Provantis IT Solutions through a traditional search fund in spring 2022 and has been running the business as operator ever since. Since taking over, Benny has rebranded the company from Provantis to Zep, built a marketing and sales engine from the ground up, and is driving the commercial transformation of a legacy software business. He's doing this with a small team, a finite budget, and the real-world constraint that existing customers still need to be served while the commercial model changes underneath them. For ETA operators, this is a very common situation with challenges that are hard to anticipate. Benny is here to bring light to some of these challenges, sharing his learnings around the go-to-market structure. Benny, welcome to Lineage. Benny, you acquired a 20-plus-year-old software company. What did you actually see when you arrived, and how did you diagnose what was missing?
When we started, we found that the company has been growing through the product and through recommendations over almost 22 years. They made it up to 1,200 customers at the point when we entered the company. So that obviously is an impressive track record. But when we had a deeper or closer look on the go-to-market side, we realized that there was actually not much effort going into that compared to the effort that they put into the product. So, of course, for Christian and me as dual searchers with a business background, that was a pretty nice playing field. And we basically had the opportunity to restructure or actually build up the entire marketing team and processes, and also restructure the sales and customer success team and processes entirely, since besides a paid Google Ads account, not much else was really established there. And also that was rather going on a priority 2 or 3 rather than priority number 1.
Since you acquired the business via a traditional search fund and obviously did a due diligence on the company, what was your impression around the marketing sales engine versus what you then actually found when you got into the business? Was that close to the truth, or was there a discrepancy between these two stages?
It was pretty obvious from the due diligence phase, to be honest, because you just had to take a look at the website, which has been around for over 10 years. Also, the brand had been around for around 12, 13 years without a major refactoring. And also when we acquired the company, a couple of people from our network approached us and asked us hey, is the company really big enough? The website does not really give the impression that there's that much behind it. And that was just the case. So actually the product was really good at the time, but the impression, the website, or in general, the marketing transfers didn't really match. So when we stepped in on day one, it still hit me as a bit of a surprise to see how little work went into, for example, the Google Ads account, which consumed a lot of budget, 5 figures every month. And I guess for us as new CEOs, that is rather an opportunity than a downside, because you're able to change that from day one, and it's nothing that needs a huge project and will take a lot of time. So it's rather a quick win.
So you started with a Google Ads account. Can you elaborate a little bit on what did you then actually do with that as a basis? Did you change something immediately on the ads account? Did you expand the product?
Basically to give everyone a little bit more background about the company, when we stepped in, the company consisted of 9 team members. 2 of them were the founders, and 3 of those 9 team members were agreed to step out of the company at some point in the future. So there was no marketing team, as you can imagine, with 6 employees. So it was very hands-on work, and I was able to dig into the Google Ads account on day one. And I mean, you could just optimize some stuff here and there. I didn't really change the entire account structure, just to avoid a pitfall in the performance, because that was the only marketing channel we had at the time. But just optimizing some campaign texts and images and stuff that had not been updated in 5 to 6 years. And those were the quick wins. But then the overall project we started on the go-to-market side at first was, I think, after like 3 to 4 weeks, to hire an agency for like a big like rebranding and also like a website relaunch. So that was actually our also like main finding or main project we wanted to take away from the due diligence phase.
What was flowing into the decision to hire the agency versus, let's say, building it in-house?
Yeah, I think it was like about the fact how fast we want to move on that aspect. And since there was no marketing team, and the first role we actually hired in the marketing team was a content creator rather than marketing ops guy or like a website manager. So since we wanted to move fast, the decision to hire an agency was made pretty quickly. Also with a couple of our investors, the discussion was very straightforward on that end. And we were able to basically get that project done in a matter of around like 4 months. So I think that wouldn't have been possible with like an internal team we would have to build up. Also back at the time, since we didn't really have a brand, we didn't really have like, I don't know, the awareness in the employee space, I don't think we would have been able to hire the team that would have enabled us to move fast and also at a quality that we wanted at the time.
So it was obviously an investment that you had to do into kind of setting everything up, rebranding. What went into that decision? How did you quantify it?
I don't think it was that sophisticated, to be honest. I mean, just the fact that the website and the entire like go-to-market infrastructure hadn't been touched in so long was for us like a clear signal that we would have to move from that end. And also, since we got to know the product and we got to know customers, how passionate they were about the product, it was clear to us that we would have to do a better job at transferring this excitement to like potential other customers. And that just wasn't possible with the website and also with the brand at the time. So yeah, everything from the logo to the website to our content strategy had to change.
Were you happy with the result of the agency? If you think back or would do it today, all over again today, would you follow the same strategy, or were there things you would do differently in hindsight?
That's a pretty good question, because actually at the time we were quite happy with the result, but then also that was in 2022. That year, growth picked up quite a lot because of a change in regulation for time tracking, which is also like one part of our software. So we gained a lot of traction in the market, a lot of new customers. Also, revenue growth was developing quite good. And then we found that almost like 2 years, 2.5 years after that, the website infrastructure was just not giving us the same kind of flexibility and speed that we needed with the growth we had. So we actually migrated again from one CMS to another, which was, of course, like not the best result. And it felt like buying the same kind of project twice in a very short amount of time. But honestly, doing this kind of relaunch every 2 to 3 years is not that uncommon. But of course, we would have preferred to solve it the right way at first.
So are you planning another relaunch in 2 years again?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we're constantly working on our brand, and we're constantly also working on our positioning. So the website, of course, is like a very central element in our go-to-market strategy now. But we're now on a CMS that is future-proof. We're quite happy how we're able to develop everything around it. And I don't think there's going to be a relaunch in the next 1 or 2 years, I think.
Are there any learnings for like new first-time CEOs stepping into a business and who also find a similar situation, which is quite common in the search fund or ETA space, that marketing has not been touched, website has not been updated? Based on your experience, what should a first-time CEO focus on, like across the entire, let's say, marketing stack, and where to start first?
I think the major thing that should be considered is that you come out of a due diligence phase where you're really like founder focused. So you're trying to build the entire process around the founders, that you're basically taking over their life's work. And then on day one, it's tough to shift that focus to like an employee focused approach, because then it's actually about them. It's about you stepping into the role of the founders and taking over. during the transition phase. And with the entire like go-to-market approach we took in the first couple of years, there was always a bit of like hesitation or doubt whether it's now the right time to already touch the brand or to completely scratch the website and relaunch it, because you're basically, changing what someone has built over such a long time. And of course, like those conversations were not always easy. And when you show them the first draft of the new logo, you don't only see excitement in their faces. But then when you actually start talking to employees on an individual level and you show them what your like vision for the company is and that you think about this like long term, you actually realize that they get quite excited that someone now is also taking this into their hands and also trying to promote the product the way it should be promoted and deserves to be promoted.
The Google Ads account, that was kind of where you started. How does your marketing stack look like today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're still quite dependent on Google Ads. I mean, that has just always been our growth engine. But we've transitioned into other channels as well, just to diversify that. And I think looking back at the year 2025, when AI search and everything else around it has happened, that was a good initiative. Besides Google Ads, of course, we're also trying to get more organic traffic and just to manage our customer acquisition costs through initiatives like that. Like I said, referrals and recommendations have always been a good growth lever for us as well. Just that in the past, they've happened on a very informal way. So we also launched a referral program officially. And we're trying to be present with our brand in like various other channels like offline events, trade fairs, social media, anything that is like in the B2B SaaS playbook, I would say.
What was the core KPI that you're looking at in the Google Ads account, and how has it developed over time, just to get a sense for the importance of it for you personally?
Yeah, so I mean, nowadays our organization, of course, is much bigger. So now we've grown to almost 50 employees, but our like middle management layer is still like not complete, let's say. And I'm basically in a role where I'm having like sales and marketing, like marketing in my indirect responsibility, sales in my direct responsibility, which gives me kind of like the CRO perspective, I would say. So it's quite helpful to see like which kind of marketing initiatives lead to what kind of like pipeline creation for our sales team to make sure that they always have enough deals to work on. And those are literally like the main KPIs. So pipeline created in euros, but also in like amount of MQLs or SQLs. And then of course also in a relationship to the budget we're spending on. But to be honest, like the past couple of years, it's been quite tough to have like a tight grip on those KPIs, because with everything happening in the market and how AI is changing Google's traditional search game, cost per lead or KPIs like that are just not comparable to the year before or even the quarter before.
What is a KPI that you still rely on today, or where you feel like this is giving me something how I can steer the business on the marketing side?
Yeah, for me, it's really just right now about like pipeline created. So I want to make sure that with the budget we're allocating to marketing, our salespeople have enough like deals to work on, and that like intuitively on a day-to-day gives me a good feeling. And then going one level deeper, we have like basically a business plan which drills down into like MQLs, but also like how much do we need to have like top of funnel to actually reach those MQLs. So it's quite a structured process by now, but still a way to go.
How does the marketing team look today? Kind of what roles are covered, and what was the sequencing there? How to hire them?
Yeah, so I've built up the team in my direct responsibility at first. After the content creator, we hired. Wait, now I need to make sure that I'm finding the right order, the right timeline. But after that, we hired a marketing operations manager who's in charge of our CRM, websites, everything ops related, and then we also hired someone to take care of our performance marketing. So everything is in her hands. And by now, or after that, basically I had to think about like, can I continue to take direct responsibility of the team and also to be like so deep into the day-to-day, and decided to hire a head of marketing beginning of last year. And nowadays the team consists of 7 employees, 2 working students, the others are full-time. So it's quite a big change over the past 4 years compared to where we started.
And their core objective is pipeline creation for the sales team. Now, a lot of first-time CEOs might not be familiar with how a pipeline is typically built. How does a good sales pipeline look like for you?
So I think the essential question you should ask yourself is, especially if it's a SaaS business, is your product more on the product-led growth side or on the sales-led growth side? For us, it's actually both. So that makes things a bit more complex and a bit more challenging. So we try to have like a self-serve motion for people who find us and are interested in our like smaller product lines or like the less monthly recurring revenue product lines. And we try to be very high touch and very personal with everyone who is like bigger in terms of their account, but also in our like higher product tiers. And in the beginning, when we started, there were 2 people, both not full-time, taking care of customer support, sales, upselling on a day-to-day. I don't know how they did it back then with 1,200 customers, but it just shows how much expertise they had, I would say. But basically nowadays we have like a structured sales and customer success set up, and 3 senior account executives taking care of the entire sales motion. And they basically touch all the leads who are big enough to actually get their attention. And then depending on like how big the deal actually is, there's more and more involvement. So actually like we have sales cycles ranging from a matter of days or 1 week up to like 6 months. And I think for them, it's quite nice to work with such a wide range and diversity of leads. But of course, the ones that are most fun are the big ones that actually convert.
And in terms of the 2 teams working together, the marketing side is generating, let's say, the noise around SEP and creating these. What makes actually a marketing qualified lead in MQL and MQL, and when does it turn into a sales qualified lead in SQL?
So right now we're focusing really on like hard conversions on our website. So you can either have like a demo booking or you can set up your trial and start yourself. So those are like the 2 main determinants that make an MQL. And once the MQL is created and it has like a certain data quality, not like a Gmail address and some phone number from Peru or something like that, then it actually becomes like sales qualified. So as soon as the account executives moves the deal from one stage to the next, that automatically triggers the SQL creation or allocation.
Which then is picked up by the sales team to follow up. How does that look like for that team in particular?
So basically we try to be in like personal contact as soon as possible. So that will be a phone call, ideally in the first couple of hours after registering on our website. I think it's just super important to be in touch with them when the topic is still top of mind, because nowadays with like all kinds of review platforms and comparison opportunities, also with LLMs, you can just type in, give me top 5 solutions for project management, and you're either in it or not. But then you can also be sure that the trial sign up on your website is not the only trial sign up that they're doing that day. And so I think it's really important to have that first personal touch point as soon as possible, and then just be present with like a first demo, walk them through the account, because depending on our product portfolio and the wide range of product lines we have, it can be quite complex to get like a first onboarding. So I think structuring that with like personal touch points is essential.
Do you have some best practices or some learnings, let's say, from the past on how these touch points need to be orchestrated, how the handover happens?
Yeah, I think we're coming from a time, or when we entered the company, we were at a stage where we were working with a lot of like self-developed tools. So we basically had like a customer database as an like internally developed tool that served as a CRM as well, but there was like no automation in there and scalability was very limited. So it was pretty clear that after 6 to 9 months, we started the migration to a CRM like HubSpot. And I think that today is our like core tool in everything we do on the go-to-market side. Super happy that we made that choice back then. and quite early. And then on top of that platform, you're able to build like all kinds of automations. So for example, if marketing is able to create a lead that is automatically pushed into a Slack channel that we have for all the salespeople, and then they basically receive the lead in a round robin structure and can have that first touch point as soon as possible. So there's not any like bureaucracy on the way from marketing to sales.
Which tools are you using? Like, what are the major ones internally?
I mean, for now or by now, it's quite a wide range, but I think the main tool stack consists of HubSpot, Notion, Slack. On the marketing side, of course, we're now also working a lot with Claude and ChatGPT, depending on the use case. And yeah, then there's a couple of other tools like Zipgate for calling and so on and so forth.
On the sales side, you mentioned there were 2 people in the beginning. Now you've built up a team. What was the process like? Because that sounds more like change management rather than building something from scratch that did not exist. What was your experience on the sales side with the team and the processes that you implemented now versus 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think we've come a long way on that front. In the beginning, it was rather a passive sales approach that we took. So we had like first demos with accounts, but with the like missing tool in terms of HubSpot, there was not really a good way to have like follow-up sequencing and automate as much as possible around it and actually have like a pipeline management per employee. So I think the tools and the change management had to go like hand in hand. And I still remember that back then when we were implementing HubSpot, I didn't really receive much excitement from our colleagues, but today it really is our system of record per customer account. So we have all the touch points, let it be by phone or help desk in Intercom. Everything is consolidated in HubSpot and it's like really essential. Yeah, change management goes hand in hand with that. And also like it took a couple of iterations to go to like a standard account executive role set up in the sales team. We've actually always tried to do that in a dialogue with the existing employees before hiring new people who would then maybe come with like a very traditional sales mindset in an organization which just wasn't there at that point where it should have been to accommodate those. So yeah, we always try to have that open dialogue about where a next step might be, and it was rather little steps we took along the way rather than changing to a commission-based structure on day one. So I think overall the process was probably like 2.5 to 3 years and took a couple of iterations to get there.
What were the first hires you added to the team?
Yeah, like I said, we didn't take like the all-in approach on day one to implement like this, for example, account executive structure straight away. We rather went in like small steps. So the first people we hired were still like rather a broad skill set or broad skill set to the table rather than being really focused on one or the other. So it was rather like a CSM, a customer success type of profile we were looking for in the beginning to be able to accommodate both sales, but also, be willing to do customer support and solve really tricky cases. And then I would say after like 1 to 2 years, we realized that with those like little steps, we would always reach like a ceiling in our development and also in scaling our go-to-market, that we then like step by step split up the roles. Like instead of having everything in like a customer success call pool, we then divided it into sales and have like support and customer success in the second bucket. And right now we're actually working on like focusing our efforts on more support and more customer success separately as well. So yeah, I think for us it's like a process that just takes time, because we were not in a situation where we had the problem that we were not growing or growth was slowing down. It was actually the opposite. So we were not desperate to make like big moves and risk a downside on the change management front.
It sounded you were going more for a generalist role just to cover certain pockets, which ultimately hit the ceiling that you mentioned. And then you started specializing. Is that kind of what can that be replicated?
Yeah, I think there hasn't been like that one point in time where the realization came. It's rather that once you have like a tool like HubSpot, and once you've solved like the basic like issues you found when entering the company, you realize there's still a lot of like room to grow into like a standard, in our case, B2B SaaS playbook. And if you have a tool like HubSpot that has all those nice features like pipeline management and marketing automation, etc., etc., you then start to dig deeper into that and actually like try to lift that up. And of course, along the way, we also found that I sometimes was not quite happy how we managed some follow-ups and like some deals that we then ended up losing, and asking myself, hey, that have ended differently if we would have had like a more focused sales approach or a more structured process. So I think it was like iterative based on like mistakes or things that could have gone better, in my opinion.
You mentioned commission-based structure. What's kind of the model that you decided to go with today around the sales incentivization structure?
Yeah, so that also already took like 2 iterations. So I think it's like learning by doing, especially if you don't have any historic data on like what could be a good MRR target per month per account executives. It just takes some time to really get a better feeling and understanding of that. And we're now like in the second year of doing that. I think this year we've made like major improvements for both sides. So actually to keep the motivation up and to have like reachable targets for our account executives. But on the other hand, also still have them aligned with our like business plan and our growth targets. Yeah, we basically, since we have an MRR based business model, that's also the main incentive that they have as their like variable salary component. And on top of that, there's some like extra add-ons that they can sell, but they are rather like side effects compared to the main incentivization.
You mentioned you need the data to actually set realistic targets and get people behind it. Are there other factors you considered or mistakes you made in setting it up that people should be aware about?
I think the tough part about being in charge both of sales and marketing is that you see a very detailed view on the marketing plan for next year, and you expect that this will really take off and the KPIs will develop quite well. And based on that, you also structure the sales targets, because of course, if you allocate more budget to marketing, then that kind of percentage growth, it should hopefully also play out on the pipeline side. But that was a learning in the first year. That's just not the case, and it doesn't correlate that much or as much as you would think. So I think it's really important to not only take that business case view on both departments, but do as good as possible on the marketing side, and then rather plan like a conservative approach on the sales side and have like an upside for the account executives, because the like motivation you would lose if you do it differently hurts you more than what you might win as a couple of extra percentages.
And how does the planning now, the business plan / target setting work today at Zap?
I mean, it's very, very top down. So we plan the overall year in terms of our top line, cost structure, and bottom line. And then we basically take that MRR target growth, which needs to come from new accounts rather than existing customers. We take that and break it down into our like sales channels, which is right now very inbound sales focused. But of course, we also want to diversify that into the future with some outbound sequence, more partner motions, and more referral-based motions. But basically, right now, it's basically top to bottom, going to the marketing team, telling them, hey, we need this amount of prospects, this amount of MQLs. And then we assume that the conversion to SQLs and opportunities and closed one happens either the same way as in the past, or we actually gain a couple of percentages. Well,
What's like a dream MRR number that you would love to kind of close nowadays, and how did it change also?
yeah, so I think historically we've come a long way in terms of like what our customer segment is and how we define our ICP and our persona. 4 years ago, I would say that we were really focused on like SMEs, so from 1 to 50 employees. And with all the rebranding initiatives and increasing brand awareness that we've gained in the last couple of years, I would say that we're moving more and more upmarket. So today I would say that I'm really comfortable with like several hundred employees, and also if we serve companies with 1,000+ employees. And we've also, of course, like changed our sales approach for like those kind of bigger accounts. And yeah, as you can imagine, the range is really wide on the MRR side. So everything from 50 up to like 15,000 euros MRR is possible. And I think we always have really interesting deals with like bigger corporates and international companies that are in the 5-figure MRR range. And I think we're also getting much better to actually give them the sales process they deserve, because it's not about the product. The product is there. It serves every customer like in a very similar way, and it is able to do that. But I think it took some learning that like a 10K MRR deal just needs a different kind of handling and more attention, especially if they look at different kind of solutions that do not only, for example, serve them virtually.
Was that already part of your strategy when you first entered the company to go after these larger accounts, or how did that progression play out?
Yeah, I mean, some of the bigger logos you see on our website today have been around for like 10+ years in our customer base. So we knew that the product is capable of doing that. I think just back then, the website and the way the messaging to the outside world worked just didn't really enable us to find those at scale. And I think now it's working quite better. Why not jeopardizing where we came from? So today we still serve more and more companies in the 10, 20, 30 employee size range.
One topic I wanted to touch on, a lot of the software businesses or software-enabled services, they start with like a licensing model. You found that partly at the company when you acquired it, and then today you're fully on a recurring revenue model.
Yeah, so lucky enough, our two founders back in the year 2000 always started with like a cloud-based similar kind of approach. I realized that they were way too early in the market. So after a couple of years, they also offered like on-premise licensing. And when we came in 2022, we found that both business lines were still active, and also on the go-to-market side, we were still offering on-premise licenses. Basically, after 1 year, we found that the demand for on-premise was really, really low compared to the cloud-based licensing, and decided to stop distributing those on the go-to-market side. At first, still serving our existing customers in that segment. And then basically over the past 2 years, it's been a transition phase of migrating as many on-premise customers as possible to our cloud solution, because most of them have been around for 15, 20 years already. And we just also wanted to show them that we value that. But of course, it's a process that doesn't go without friction. Pricing is a very sensitive topic, of course. If you come from a one-time fee or a yearly service contract to a monthly subscription fee, which also just has a different like pricing structure. You cannot save the difference with a single discount. And also the process of migrating, like especially larger accounts from this on-prem setup, sometimes much older versions than the one we're already using today in the cloud version, has been painful at times. But I think it's like totally worth it, because the feedback we're actually receiving for the new cloud version, and for them not having to update their local systems all the time themselves, is quite positive. And I think we're quite happy to be 100% SaaS based today.
How did you lead that conversation with these customers, like long-time customers who knew the product, who were used to it? How did you approach it?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that is really important is to give the context they need and they deserve. So that communication was coming straight from Christian and me as the C-level of the company. I'm telling them that it's a rather strategic decision and nothing to like hurt them, because you can basically imagine it's like two infrastructures running at the same time. So when we updated the cloud version, we always had to update the on-prem version as well, but that was rather like 2-3 months later, because bug fixing for the cloud version first needed to be stable. And yeah, it's just a long tail of effort that comes after that for a rather small portion of our business. So I think that context is really important in the beginning. We communicated also super early. So 1.5 years in advance, we announced that we were going to make the move and that we're not going to service those contracts anymore in 1.5 years from then. And then just started a conversation. Actually, that project was also personally in my hands because I just wanted to also, be in touch with those customers personally. I think it's then just a matter of giving them the easiest migration possible. So in terms of change management, also showing them what the cloud version is capable of doing as of today, to also show them that there's like an upside in terms of features and functionality. And the third thing, of course, is pricing discussion, which is a bit tricky because those pricing models just work completely differently. And depending on the size of the customers and when they joined us like 20 years ago, the difference was sometimes huge. And then you give like quite a big double-digit discount on the monthly license and you're still so far away to kind of find that middle ground.
Can you elaborate like what goes into an MRR based structure versus a one-time licensing fee, and how do you basically calculate these prices, just to get a sense for the differences there?
Yeah, so I think the average customer that we wanted to migrate was looking at a pricing difference of like 3 to 4x on an ARR basis. So that is something that you could find arguments for, and that you could also like buffer a bit with like a proper discount. But we had some customers who joined us like 20 years ago, and back then the company was still rather early stage, and they were really like also desperate for big customers. So some of those customers had like legacy discounts in the on-prem model, which were already huge. We sometimes looked at price difference of like 8 to 10x ARR, which is crazy. And you finding a middle ground there was rather challenging.
In general, the price point itself, is that in the MRR model generally higher, you would say, than in an on-prem 1-year licensing fee?
Yeah, I think it's generally higher, especially as there is like an amortization of the one-time costs you have with the on-prem model. So of course, if you buy the software, or if you would have bought the software like 5 years ago, the one-time fee would have been like the major cost contributor. And then the annual licensing fee is like a fraction of that. And since most of our customers bought the software like 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they were not even having just the slightest thought of what they used to pay for initially. So they were just comparing what we were offering them in the cloud version to the annual service contract that they now had. And that's how the big gaps came into place.
And more generally speaking, how do you set the correct price of a product? What did you look at?
Yeah, so when we stepped into our roles, the pricing was quite complex. It had grown over 22 years without like actually simplifying it, but rather adding onto it. So we had like a mixture of like product lines that had a base price. We had add-on modules, which had like completely different pricing logics in between those. And then overall the licensing that results out of those two combinations was also like at a deflating pricing curve. So it was tough to understand from our website what you would actually have to pay for a certain number of employees and for a certain feature scope. And it actually took us like 2 iterations over 4 years with like two price restructurings to come to like a rather standard SaaS pricing that we have today. And of course, over the time, we also adjusted like the prices that came with the product lines and the additional modules, but in both directions. So for example, our smallest product line back then was priced very low compared to our competition. And we had increased that significantly since then. But then our second product line was rather expensive compared to competitors. So there we decreased the price. And I think it's quite important to also check your sales data, your closed lost reasons, and find patterns where you lose against certain competitors in certain deal ranges. over time and then draw back to, is that due to features? Is it due to pricing or due to other reasons? And make adjustments based on that.
So benchmarking is critical along the way, and taking also the time to, and not shying away to also change the structure again after you collected more data as you go along.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for new customers, it's always easy to change prices and to adapt the pricing model. You just always need to be aware of what to do with existing customers. And coming from this rather complex pricing structure in the beginning to where we are today, that also took like rather big changes with some customer accounts because they were on a pricing structure that was just not up to date anymore after 5 or 10 years in some cases.
Any other tips you would give operators, first-time CEOs with regards to communication, such a fundamental change of the business model?
I think it's just quite important to understand or to set yourself a target. Like, how do you want this migration to play out? Like, what's your best case? Is it that you take 80%, 90% of your customers to the cloud? What's your worst case? And then based on that, find like a segmentation of that customer group with which you want to spend more time personally because they have a higher ARR contribution, rather than the ones that are less likely to migrate and that also send you early signals. So when we send out the first communication, we received some pushback straight away that they do not want to move to the cloud, that they have it in their service contracts with their customers, that they're not allowed to do it. So those are the ones that you will not be able to convince in the next 6 to 12 months. Important to leave the door open to them. And I think we still have a couple of customers that we didn't manage to migrate to the cloud that will probably reach out to us in the next 6 to 18 months because they had other stuff to sort out first before migrating. But yeah, to really understand where to spend more of your time than where to spend less of your time, because in our case, the team size is limited and you really want to have those efforts in the right place.
So you would expect churn happening in such a transition?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So some customers like didn't even know that they were still paying for that service contract, for example, or they belonged to like a bigger corporate and took that as a chance to basically implement the corporate solution rather than have like a separate solution for the use case. So there's always some churn happening. But I think since it's like an existing customer base, you can be like really close to 100%. So I think everything 80 to 90% range is realistic if you make the migration as easy as possible and have those pricing discussions early on and also very transparent.
Since we are talking about metrics, it's a nice segue into the final part that I wanted to touch upon today. What are like the 3 numbers on the CEO dashboard that you look at, steer the business with, and that are important to you?
Yeah, so most important KPI is MRR. So across all product lines and across all services. And depending on how that is growing or maybe not growing, the drill down on if it's like contraction MRR that is causing it, if it's new MRR on the sales side that is not working out quite as well as we expected, or if it's like upsell MRR. So I think like having the MRR as the main KPI and drilling that down into 3-4 separate buckets that contribute to it on a monthly basis is the most important thing in our business model.
Is there a metric that, like a hidden metric, let's say, that is non-obvious, where you say this has actually given me over the years an early look into either the business going really well or something's not going right besides MRR?
I mean, there's probably a couple, but like one KPI that I used to underestimate at first was like contraction MRR and understanding where it comes from, because that also gives you a lot of visibility into industry trends. So we haven't really talked about our ICP yet, but one of our ICPs, for example, is IT consulting and IT services firms. And not sure if you heard about it, but there's been a lot of consolidation going on in the past years, like companies like Accenture and also some roll-up strategies happening in the market lead to consolidation of the players that we used to have as, or some of them used to have as customers. So when you look at the contraction MRR itself, you think that, okay, something's wrong with the product or they're having less users they're buying less additional modules, whatever. But then you actually find out that there's this industry trend happening that you cannot really do much about, rather than try to be on the side that is doing the roll up or buying those companies and growing with them. And lucky enough, some of our customers are doing exactly that, but companies like Accenture and Co are coming into the market. There's not much you can do about that lost business.
And what is your ICP today versus in the past?
I think we are still quite close to our core customer base. So we're focusing on IT consulting, management consulting, and engineering companies. So we want them to have like a rather complex project structure so that we can accommodate them into our software. And like I said, in the size range, we are now moving more and more upmarket, but I would still say that's like the classic. So quite a wide range that term can cover, but from 1 to several hundred up to 1,000 employees is more and more our playground.
Benny, as a closing question, for an operator who has acquired a business and is looking at the go-to-market strategy, thinking there's nothing here, I have to build this myself, what is the single most important thing to get right before you start?
Before you start is to get your hands dirty, to be in those sales calls, to do those sales calls and processes yourself, see where things go wrong, where you win or where you lose deals, and really understand your positioning. Lucky enough for us, the company was that small that we didn't really have a choice but get our hands dirty. But I was very hands-on the first 1.5 to 2 years in our sales motion. And it really helped me to understand, like, who is it that we are selling to and why do we lose? Why do we win? What are the pains and needs? And have a clear view on the persona and the ICP.
Benny, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, taking the time. There were definitely a lot of nuggets in there, and I hope to see you soon for potentially another topic at some point, but really appreciate the time and your support.
Thank you, Carlo. Really enjoyed being here, and thank you for having me.